There are two numbers on every investment statement. One of them decides whether you become wealthy, the other is the one you've been staring at. Most people open their account, look at the return percentage, and close the app. 7%, 8%, good year or bad year, that's the number everyone tracks. But there's a second number sitting right next to it, and that number, not the percentage odds, is the one that determines whether compounding actually works for you or just pretends to. Here's what makes this uncomfortable. Two people can earn the exact same return in the exact same fund for the exact same number of years. One of them ends up with a portfolio that generates more growth in a single year than they earn at their job. The other barely notices investing did anything at all. Same percentage, same patience, completely different outcome. The difference has nothing to do with skill, timing, or market selection. It comes down to one variable that almost nobody talks about when they talk about compounding. And once you see it, every investing conversation you've ever had will sound incomplete. Let's run an experiment. Take 3 investors. Give them the same index fund, give them the same 7% annual real return, roughly what the S&P 500 has delivered historically after inflation. Give them the same 30-year window, but give them different starting balances. Investor A starts with $5,000. Investor B starts with $50,000. Investor C starts with $250,000. None of them add another dollar, no contributions, just a lump sum and 30 years of patience. Before I show you the results, make a guess. How much does each investor end up with after 30 years at 7%? Most people think the growth is roughly proportional, 10 times the starting money, 10 times the ending money, and mathematically, that's true. But the experience of those 30 years is radically different. Here's what happens in year 1. Investor A earns $350 on their $5,000. That's about $29 a month, barely a phone bill. Investor B earns $3,500 on their $50,000. That's about $290 a month. Noticeable? Investor C earns $17,500 on their $250,000. That's about $1,460 a month, a second income. Same percentage, same fund, same year. Investor C made 50 times more dollars than Investor A. Now here's the part that actually matters. By year 10, Investor A has about $9,800. In 10 years, the market gave them $4,800. That's $480 a year. Not nothing, but not life-changing. Investor B has about $98,000. The market gave them $48,000 over the decade. That's $4,800 a year, exactly what the average American contributes to a 401k. Investor C has about $490,000. The market gave them $240,000. That's $24,000 a year, close to a full-time minimum wage income showing up from the market alone. Same return, same patience, same fund. 3 completely different financial realities, and by year 30, Investor A has about $38,000, Investor B has about $380,000, Investor C has about $1.9 million. The return was identical, the experience was not. The percentage didn't decide the outcome, the balance did. That's the number nobody watches. Every financial influencer, every YouTube video, every investing book, they all talk about returns. Get 7%, get 10%, beat the market, find alpha, and returns matter. That's not the argument. The argument is that returns get all the attention, while the variable that actually controls how investing feels month to month, year to year, is the balance. Let me show you why. 7% on $10,000 is $700. 7% on $25,000 is $1,750. 7% on $50,000 is $3,500. 7% on $100,000 is $7,000. 7% on $250,000 is $17,500. 7% on $500,000 is $35,000. Same percentage down the entire column, but the dollar growth ranges from $700 to $35,000. A 50-to-1 difference in what you actually see hit your account from the exact same rate. This is why compounding feels broken for the first decade. It's not broken. The rate is doing exactly what it's supposed to do. But 7% on a small number produces a small dollar amount, and small dollar amounts don't feel like progress. Think about it in terms of hours worked. If you earn $30 an hour at your job, a $700 market gain is about 23 hours of work the market did for you. Not bad, but invisible against a full year of saving. A $17,500 gain, that's 583 hours, almost 15 full work weeks the market handed you. You'd notice that. A $35,000 gain, that's 1,166 hours. 29 work weeks. The market essentially worked a second full-time job on your behalf. Same rate. The only thing that changed was the balance it was working on. This creates a problem that nobody warns new investors about. For the first several years of investing, your paycheck contribution is doing more work than the market. You're the engine. The market is barely the exhaust, and every month you check your statement and see a number that doesn't seem to justify the sacrifice. That's not a flaw in compounding. That's a feature of how percentages interact with small numbers. It's arithmetic, but it creates a psychological trap that catches millions of people, and it has a name. Let's build a real case. Jess is 32. She's a physical therapist in Chicago. She takes home about $62,000 a year. After rent, car payment, utilities, food, and the occasional dinner out, she has about $350 left over each month. She puts all of it into a total market index fund. $350 a month, $4,200 a year, 7% real return. Let's see what her first 10 years look like. End of year 1, she's put in $4,200. The market added roughly $140. Her balance is about $4,340. That $140 is about $33 a month of free market growth. She could find that much in her couch cushions. End of year 3, she's put in $12,600. Balance is about $13,900. Market gain this year, roughly $920. That's $77 a month, less than her phone bill. End of year 5, she's put in $21,000. Balance is about $25,100. Market gain this year, roughly $1,640, about $137 a month. One decent dinner out generated by the market. End of year 7, she's put in $29,400. Balance is about $37,600. Market gain this year, roughly $2,450, about $204 a month. The market is starting to show up. Barely. End of year 10, she's put in $42,000. Balance is about $60,700. Market gain this year, roughly $3,900, about $325 a month. 10 years, $42,000 of Jess's actual paychecks deposited. The market added about $18,700 over the entire decade. Her annual market gain in year 10 is $3,900, still less than the $4,200 she contributes herself. 10 years of discipline, and the market still hasn't caught up to her paycheck. This is where the vast majority of investors stall, not because the math failed them, because the math hadn't been given enough raw material to work with yet. Every compounding chart you've seen shows a curve that goes vertical. What they never show you is the first 10 years of that curve, the part that looks almost flat. That flat zone has a name in behavioral finance research. It's the period where investors are most likely to cash out, shift strategies, chase returns, or stop contributing altogether. I call it the valley. And Jess is standing at the bottom of it right now, staring at a statement that gives her no mathematical reason to believe the curve is about to bend. The reason the valley feels so discouraging is that there are structural breakpoints in compounding that nobody labels for you. Your balance doesn't grow linearly. It passes through distinct zones where the math behaves differently. And the experience of investing changes completely depending on which zone you're in. I mapped 3. Zone 1, the treadmill, any balance under $50,000. In this zone, your annual market growth is smaller than what a disciplined middle-class saver can contribute on their own. At $30,000, the market gives you about $2,100 at 7%. At $40,000, it's about $2,800. Compare that to Jess's $4,200 annual contribution. The market is lagging behind her paycheck. She is the engine, the market is the passenger. This zone feels like a treadmill because you're putting in real effort and the account barely moves beyond what you deposit. Compounding is technically working, it's just invisible at this scale. Zone 2, the handoff, between $50,000 and $150,000. This is where the transfer of power happens. At $75,000, the market at 7% delivers about $5,250 a year, more than Jess's entire annual contribution. For the first time, the market is contributing more to the account than the human is. The paycheck is still helping, but the balance is starting to pull its own weight. At $100,000, the market delivers $7,000. At $150,000, it delivers $10,500. This is where the math takes the baton from the saver. The paycheck hands off to the portfolio. The account stops needing you to grow. Zone 3, the flywheel. Anything past $250,000. At $250,000, the market at 7% delivers $17,500 a year. That's more than 4 times Jess's annual contribution. At $500,000, it's $35,000. At $750,000, it's $52,500. The contribution becomes rounding error. The account is generating its own fuel. Every dollar of growth creates new base for more growth. This is the zone where compounding actually looks like the charts. This is what the gurus are showing you when they post exponential curves. But they never tell you it takes most people 15 to 20 years of contributing to reach this zone, if they reach it at all. And that brings us to the part that should make you uncomfortable. The Federal Reserve runs a survey of consumer finances every 3 years. It's the most comprehensive wealth study in the country, and the numbers tell a clear story about which zone most American households actually reach. The median retirement savings for households under 35 is approximately $18,880. For households 35 to 44, it's approximately $45,000. For households 45 to 54, it's approximately $115,000. For households 55 to 64 too, the final stretch before retirement, the median is approximately $185,000. Read those numbers against the 3 zones. Under 35, deep inside the treadmill, the market is barely registering. 35 to 44, still on the treadmill, approaching the handoff but not yet there. 45 to 54, inside the handoff. The market is starting to contribute more than the paycheck, but the flywheel is still over $100,000 away. 55 to 64, past the handoff but still well below the flywheel. At $185,000, the market delivers roughly $13,000 a year at 7%, solid, but nowhere near the self-sustaining growth that makes compounding feel powerful. The median American household at peak savings age never reaches the flywheel. Their compounding never got to do the thing they were told it would do. Not because they didn't save, not because they invested wrong. Because the balance never got large enough for the percentage to produce meaningful dollars. That is not a willpower failure. That is an arithmetic problem. And it raises a question most financial advice completely ignores. If most people never reach the zone where compounding becomes powerful, is the standard advice, just invest and wait, actually sufficient? The answer is uncomfortable, and we'll come back to it. Let's go back to Jess, because something important is about to happen in her account. Remember, year 10, her balance was about $60,700, and the market was generating $3,900 a year, still less than her $4,200 contribution. Year 11 changes that. At roughly $68,000, the market at 7% generates about $4,760. Jess contributes $4,200. For the first time in her investing life, the market puts in more money than she does. This is the crossover moment. It doesn't show up in any app notification, no alert goes off. Her statement looks exactly the same as last month's, but structurally, everything has changed. Before the crossover, Jess was the primary engine of her account's growth. After the crossover, the market is. And from this point forward, the gap only widens. By year 15, her balance is about $110,000. The market delivers roughly $7,200, almost double her own contribution. By year 20, her balance is about $182,000. The market delivers roughly $11,900, nearly 3 times her contribution. By year 25, her balance is about $283,000. She's crossed into the flywheel. The market delivers roughly $18,700, more than 4 times what she puts in. By year 30, her balance is about $425,000. The market delivers roughly $28,300 in that single year. Jess contributed $4,200 that year. The market contributed $28,300. The market delivered almost 7 times more than her paycheck. And the total she contributed over 30 years, $126,000. The total the market added, roughly $299,000. The market gave her more than double what she put in herself. But almost all of that market growth showed up in the last 10 to 15 years. The first decade built the foundation. The second decade started the engine. The third decade is when the engine ran at full power without her. This is the moment every compounding conversation is really about. Most people just never get there. Jess's math is clean. Real-world investing is not. There are genuine situations where this compounding arc breaks down, and we owe you the honest version. If you can't stay invested for the full timeline, the backloaded math doesn't help. Compounding rewards time. If you withdraw at year 12 for a down payment or an emergency, you leave during the handoff, well before the flywheel. The curve never gets to bend for you. If you're in a high fee fund, the zones shift. A 1% annual expense ratio on Jess's account erases roughly $75,000 from her year 30 balance. That's nearly 18% of her ending number, all AI, gone to fees alone. The flywheel still exists. It just moves further down the timeline, and some savers run out of working years before they reach it. If real returns come in lower, say 5% instead of 7%, the zones don't disappear, but the timeline stretches. Jess's year 30 balance drops from about $425,000 to roughly $295,000. The shape holds, the vertical takes longer to arrive. And if Jess had started at 47 instead of 32, even doubling her contribution to $700 a month, her balance after 15 years lands around $195,000. She enters the handoff. She never reaches the flywheel inside her working life. The math still works. The calendar might not. But here's what the honest counter doesn't change. For the saver who starts in their early 30s, holds for 3 decades, and stays in a low-cost total market index fund, the math holds the way Jess's math holds. Not because the market guarantees 7%, because the structure of compounding guarantees that the later years produce more dollars than the early years, every single time. The question isn't whether the curve bends. The question is whether you're still invested when it does. Let me put the entire 30-year arc into 2 numbers, because this is the part that should permanently change how you look at your statement. In Jess's first full year of investing, the market gave her $140. In her 30th year, the market gave her $28,300. Same person, same fund, same $350 a month going in, roughly 200 times more growth from the same percentage. The only thing that changed was the size of the balance the percentage was working on. That is the number nobody watches. Not the return, not the percentage, the balance. Every month, when you open your investment account, your eye goes straight to the return. Green arrow up, red arrow down. Good month, bad month. But the return isn't what controls your experience. The balance is. And the balance is what determines which zone you're in, the treadmill, the handoff, or the flywheel. If you're in the treadmill right now, the statement will feel discouraging. That's not evidence that investing doesn't work. It's evidence that the balance hasn't reached the zone where the percentage produces meaningful dollars yet. If you're in the handoff, the curve is starting to bend. The market is taking the baton. This is the part most quitters never see. And if you ever reach the flywheel, you'll understand what every financial textbook was trying to tell you, except they never explained why it takes so long to feel real. The people who build wealth through compounding are not smarter than the people who don't. They didn't find better funds or time the market. They just stayed invested long enough for the balance to cross from one zone into the next. And the people who quit, they looked at year 5 or year 8 or year 12 and decided that what they were seeing was the permanent math. It wasn't. It was the opening act. So here's what's worth doing tonight. Open your investment account, look at the balance, not the return. Figure out which zone you're sitting in, then calculate how many years of contributions it takes to reach the next one. That's the number that tells you whether you're about to feel the curve bend. If this changed how you read your investment statement, subscribe to WealthLoom and turn on notifications. We break down the money math that actually shapes the next 20 years of your life. And if you're wondering what happens when you run Jess's math at $700 a month instead of $350, or start her at $25 instead of $32, or run the same numbers inside a Roth IRA where taxes disappear, that video is coming next. None of this is financial advice. This is math. The curve bends. You just have to be there when it does.